So these are 7 of the best investments and purchases you can make in your 20s to quickly build wealth, starting with investing in a zone of serendipity, which in simple terms is just strategically putting yourself in environments where opportunities naturally occur. So for example, if you're an ambitious person, you should live in a place surrounded by a bunch of ambitious and talented people. Like, I remember grabbing coffee with one of my founder friends who was looking for money for his new startup. And maybe we were talking a little bit too loud because the woman that was sitting next to us across the next table, she kept looking and glancing over at us. And I didn't really think much about it at first, but as we were about to leave, she came up to my friend and she said that she was interested in learning more about his business and that her VC firm was hosting an event next week and that he should drop by. Although I agree that it's expensive to live in zones of serendipity, which is like New York City, DC, San Francisco, etc., I personally believe the connections and opportunities that you're gonna get there is gonna be worth it in the long run, because you can easily grow your knowledge and your income a lot faster. Like, there are a bunch of successful founders and content creators in New York City, and every time I grab dinner with some of those people, I always get new ideas on how to scale my business. What's beautiful about living in a zone of serendipity is that it naturally pushes you to work harder and to think bigger without always needing some innate motivation, because everyone is just hustling, right? Everyone else just doing the same thing, which makes success come a lot easier because it unlocks more opportunities that you never would have encountered otherwise. You're always one conversation away from finding a mentor, collaborator, or someone who solved the exact same problem that you're experiencing right now. And obviously there's some luck that goes into making such movie moments happen, but being in the zone of serendipity increases your chances by a lot. Next, in your 20s, you should invest your time and money in at least one side hustle for 12 months. I remember when I was working in corporate America, I absolutely hated my job. I was working 70 to 80-hour weeks and experienced some of the most toxic work culture ever. And I was looking for anything I could do to get out of all of this because, well, 1, I hated it, and 2, I knew that I would never be able to build wealth fast enough with just one salary. Because something I realized is that your employer has the incentive to pay you the least amount of money possible and will use every excuse in the book to not increase your salary or pay you a bonus. Like a year ago, right? One of my friends told me that his manager said no one was getting a end of year bonus because company profits were down. My friend was like super annoyed at this because yes, while company profits were slightly down, they still made billions of dollars that year, and he still didn't get any of that pile despite hitting his sales targets. And even if you like your job and you don't want to quit, I still believe trying at least one side hustle is still a great way to earn more cash in your free time and use that money to invest in yourself and your own skills so that you can hopefully get promoted or get a raise. And there are a ton of different side hustles you can try. It doesn't have to be YouTube or TikTok or anything like that, right? One of my first side hustles was an e-commerce business. I used to sell phone cases in my Shopify store. And although it took a while for me to build this up because I had to learn everything from scratch, if I were to start over again, what I think is really helpful and what I would do is use this website called Build Your Store, which uses AI to build a complete e-commerce store on Shopify for you. Build Your Store's mission is to make it as easy as possible for you to start your side hustle. By filling out a few questions, they'll create an entire online ready-to-sell Shopify store with products, product photos, descriptions, FAQ pages, and more. Your online store will already have 10 winning products inside with AutoDS as a supplier, so you're ready to sell from day one. Plus, once a customer makes a purchase, AutoDS will fulfill your orders for you. And the best part, you don't actually have to pay for the products until someone buys them from you. And if you do everything right, it's nearly completely hands-off. And one of the few things you'll still need to do is just collect payments and handle some customer support emails. Check out the link below to build your store using AI and get your first 3 months for $1 per month. Clicking that link supports the channel, but more importantly, it can help you start your side hustle and build your wealth. Thanks again to Build Your Store for sponsoring this video. The next best purchase to make in your 20s is investing in time and tax leverage. In simple terms, it's focusing on growing your wealth tax-free inside a Roth IRA account. And when I first heard about a Roth IRA in my early 20s, I mostly ignored it because I thought that I was way too young to think about or worry about retirement. And yes, while it technically is a retirement account, I immediately started using it after I knew how advantageous this was, especially if you start early on. So basically, the Roth IRA is a tax advantage account where you can contribute money to and use that money to invest with. And although you contribute money which you already pay taxes on, when you withdraw that money when you're 59 and a half, you pay zero taxes on both your contributions and your investment returns, meaning all your investment gains are tax-free. Many people think that you need to have a lot of money to start investing, but that simply isn't true. Time is actually way more important than the amount that you invest. Like, let's say you have two people, right? Samantha and John. Both Samantha and John are 25 years old. Let's say Samantha invests $5,000 every year for 10 years until she's 35. At the end of the 10 years, she invests a total of $50,000. Now, on the other hand, John doesn't actually start investing until he's 35. And then he starts to invest $5,000 every year for 30 years until he's 65. And John, in this case, invests a total of $150,000. Now, if they both invested in an S&P 500 index fund and we assume a 10% annualized average return, then by the time they're both 65, Samantha would have well over $1.3 million from her $50,000 cash contribution, while John, on the other hand, would only have a little over $900,000 from his $150,000 cash contribution. So even though John invested 3 times as much money, that $150K versus $50K, Samantha ends up with significantly more. And that's because she simply started investing 10 years earlier. In 2025, you can contribute up to $7K a year in your Roth IRA account. Now, generally, this contribution limit increases every year, but let's just say for this example, you only contribute $7K every year, right? If we assume a 10% return, you'd have over $3.4 million after 40 years, and you can withdraw all $3.4 million tax-free. There's a pretty good chance we'll all experience higher tax rates in the future. So being able to make tax-free withdrawals in the future is going to be even way more helpful. You see, by taking advantage of time and tax leverage, your money will be able to compound over time, allowing you to earn money on both your investment gains and your contributions. It's basically like rolling a snowball down a hill, where it gets bigger and faster over time. The reality is it doesn't matter if you only have $100 extra to invest in your 20s or $500. The earlier you start investing, the more time your money can grow. The next thing to purchase in your 20s is purchasing things that offer a guaranteed return on your money, like paying off your debt with interest rates above 7%. The average American has about 6.5K in credit card debt, and most people aren't really aware of how much this actually costs you in the long term. Even if you only have $1,000 of debt on your credit card, if it has a 25% interest rate, you're paying $250 in interest. That's money straight out of your pocket into the credit card company. But if you take $1,000 from, let's say, your savings or your extra cash and you pay off that credit card today, you just saved yourself from paying that $250, which is like getting a guaranteed $250 bonus or earning a 25% return in the stock market on $1,000, which, by the way, is not very common. That's why in your 20s, you really should focus on eliminating any high interest debt you have before you start investing your money, because you're guaranteed to save more than you would have earned elsewhere, potentially. The next purchase is traveling to a foreign country. And something that I didn't know until only recently is that only 42% of Americans hold a valid passport. But the truth is, traveling somewhere new can provide insights that no book or YouTube video ever could. And I never really shared this, but after I quit my job in 2019 or 2020, I started going on a solo backpacking trip throughout Asia for 6 months. I started in India, I went to Nepal, Myanmar, all the way over and ended up in Japan. And one of the most valuable things during my travels was basically meeting people who fundamentally changed my approach to money and entrepreneurship. Like in Japan, I met an entrepreneur who taught me about this Japanese practice called Kaizen, and I might be butchering it, where they basically make continuously micro improvements to their products that compound over time. The benefit to this is that instead of making one big change that you might not be able to keep doing consistently, you're making these micro mini changes that it's a lot easier for you to adopt as you continuously improve whatever it is. In one of the night markets in Taipei, I learned about this thing called minimal viable products, where street food vendors would test new food concepts and only mass produce what customers really enjoyed. That allowed them to test their products at a really cheap cost without wasting a lot of money or food. In fact, 56% of people report that traveling led to more job opportunities and personal developmental experiences, such as learning a new skill or a new language. And even now, whenever I meet other entrepreneurs, founders, or creators, we always talk about traveling and our favorite cities and our countries that we visited. And because of our traveling experience, we instantly have a common connection, which makes networking with other people a lot easier. And surprisingly, you actually need a lot less money than you think you need to travel. Like during my trip, I stayed in hostels, which cost about $3 to $5 a night. I traveled by train and buses within that country, which again, a couple of bucks. And then I could eat at local restaurants for most of my meals for like $3. And these are like really good, delicious stuff. And yes, I did get food poisoning once during my trip, but honestly, it was worth it. I think the most expensive thing that I paid for was buying the flight from New York to Delhi, but even then I spent $0 on it because I used my credit card points to pay for it. By the way, if you're interested in learning how I travel for free with credit points, just let me know in the comments and I'll make a video about it in the future. Next is investing in your health. Like, it's really sad to admit, but in my early 20s, my health was a really low priority for me because honestly, the last thing I wanted to do after working for an entire day was go to the gym and lift weights for an hour. But then I heard one of my college friends told me about his stepdad, who I knew was a real estate mogul, and what happened to him that completely made me reorder my priorities. So basically, my friend's stepdad, right? He owned a bunch of apartment buildings in Connecticut, and he was in the process of building out a vacation house in Portugal, I think. But unfortunately, he never actually had the chance to see it in person because his body never recovered from a hip replacement surgery. And it was really sad to hear this news. And that's when I really started asking myself, what is the point of being wealthy if you can't enjoy it when you're older? So nowadays, I look at prioritizing exercise and having a healthy diet like investing in a long-term health fund, right? You're building physical equity in yourself that compounds over time. And whether you do weightlifting or running or even just walking briefly for 10 to 15 minutes a day, the benefits go far beyond just burning calories. Not only do you reduce the risk of chronic diseases later in life, you also improve your focus and you improve your productivity so that you can do more and achieve more now, as well as when you're older. The reality is investing in your health and your diet in your 20s is really just laying the foundation for a healthy, high-functioning, high-energy lifestyle, and honestly, I think is a lot more important than investing in your money. The next best purchase to make is investing in psychological architecture. And in simple terms, it's when you apply certain design changes to make it a lot easier for you to do something. For example, if you ever used Amazon before, but who hasn't, right? You probably came across this one-click buy button. And if you ever used it, then you noticed how easy they make it for you to buy things. There's no cart reviews, there's no second thoughts. It's just an instant purchase feature, which sounds really great for you until you realize that you're more likely to spend money because there's no friction or natural pause points to get you to reconsider that purchase. And while companies like Amazon use psychological architecture to take advantage of your spending habits, you can also use it to make more financially responsible decisions with a lot less effort. So just a brief snippet of some of my psychological architectures I do to make better financial decisions is, one, I create a separate email that I keep just for shopping promotions and sales. This is the email address that I use to sign up for my favorite stores, and this is where they send me discounts and early access to sales and stuff, right? I don't really check it unless I want to buy something, and this simple psychological design choice means that I actively get to decide when to look for deals instead of these companies ambushing me every day to make a purchase. Another psychological design I like to do is setting up automatic transfers from my checking account once I receive my paycheck that flows money directly into my savings and my investment accounts, which makes saving and investing money a lot easier because it is the default action. Meaning I never have to worry about whether I'm saving or investing enough because it happens automatically. Which leads me to something that you've got to start accepting. And it's that even if you're trying your hardest to build wealth in your 20s, you might still feel like you're not doing enough. And that might be because you don't know these 7 lessons that made me a multimillionaire in my 20s. Click here to find out what they are so you can start implementing them in your life.